She wasn't an explorer. She wasn't trying to make history. She was a mother, and she was desperate. In 1921, Ada Blackjack boarded a ship heading into the Arctic, not for adventure, but for $50 a month, enough to save her dying son. She was told it would be safe. She was told other families would be with her. She was told help would come. None of it was true. Ada was born in 1918 on Alaska's Seward Peninsula. Weather there wasn't scenery, it was authority. Cold punished mistakes. Wind erased trails. The land kept score. After her father died, her mother sent her to Nome to be raised by Methodist missionaries. They taught her English, cooking, cleaning, how to be useful in a white town. What they didn't teach her, the old skills that kept people alive: hunting, trapping, reading ice. The one gift the North gave her through the mission was sewing. In the Arctic, a seam isn't decoration, it's survival. At 16, she married Jack Blackjack. He beat her, he starved her, he left. Of her 3 children, 2 died. The one who lived, Bennett, was sick with tuberculosis. Ada walked miles back to Nome carrying that boy when his legs gave out. She scrubbed floors and sewed for miners until she couldn't afford his care. She placed him in the same church home that had raised her. She promised herself it was temporary. Then she heard about the expedition. 4 young men needed a seamstress for a trip to Wrangel Island, remote, uninhabited, politically ambiguous. The man behind it was Vilhjalmur Stefansson, a charming explorer who called the far north the friendly Arctic. He wanted the island claimed for the British Empire. He had big plans. He needed warm bodies to plant a flag. The pay was $50 a month. Ada didn't hesitate because of ambition. She hesitated because of polar bears. Wrangel Island was known as bear country. Ada was terrified. She asked whether other native families would join. They said yes. On the day of departure, no families showed. Locals had seen the thin supplies and the late timing and wanted nothing to do with it. Ada stood alone on that dock. She tried to back out. The men promised to pick up families in Siberia. She went anyway, not because she was brave, because she had no other choice. On September 9, 1921, Ada and the 4 men set sail from Nome. Alan Crawford, 20 years old, the official leader; Fred Maurer, 28, who had survived the Arctic once before and came back anyway; Milton Galley, 19, all charm and enthusiasm; Lorne Knight, 28, confident in a way that can be useful or fatal. They also brought a kitten. They named her Vic. The stop in Siberia yielded nothing. No families, no traditional skin boat, just a heavy wooden dory, a poor substitute. Storms battered the crossing. One of their boats was blown overboard before they arrived. When Wrangel Island finally appeared through the fog, it didn't look like opportunity. It looked like a verdict. Ada watched the ship that dropped them turn and sail away. She hid her tears from the men. They built a winter camp against a hillside, a wood-burning stove at its center, tents inside the structure for extra warmth. Ada's sleeping space was also the kitchen. The men had the rest. In the beginning, there were small moments of lightness. Alan's bad jokes, Lawrence made-up poems, Ada's singing hymns quietly in the corner, Milton tapping away on his typewriter, Vic threading between their legs. But isolation makes its own weather. Within weeks, Ada's homesickness became something heavier. She cried without control. She thought about Bennett until it hurt. The men, young, restless, untrained in empathy, didn't understand her grief. They teased her. They distrusted her. One day when she refused to patch a pair of boots, Lauren tied her to a flagpole until she agreed. Not discipline, humiliation. It told Ada exactly where she stood. The polar bears didn't stop coming. One night, alone while the men were out, Ada heard heavy footsteps outside the tent, sniffing, snorting, the intimate sound of something predatory deciding whether you are food. She didn't move. The fire went out. The cold moved in. She waited for the men the way a drowning person waits for air. When Milton arrived, he shot the bear. he found Ada rigid, her face like stone. Then came the outside world's first betrayal. The relief ship did not arrive in 1922. Stefansson had sent a schooner, the Teddy Bear, but ice turned it back. Ada and the men watched the horizon for weeks. By September, they understood. No ship was coming. Their 6 months of supplies were gone. What they couldn't kill, they wouldn't eat. The winter of 1922 to 1923 was not merely cold, it was subtractive. Scurvy crept in, swollen gums, loose teeth, dark bruises blooming under skin, pain that made sleep impossible. The cure, fresh vegetables, citrus, was impossible here. The only defense was fresh, raw meat, and there was never enough. In January 1923, the men tried to cross the sea ice to Siberia, hundreds of miles to reach a wireless station. The sled was too heavy, the dogs struggled, pressure ridges rose like walls. After 2 weeks, frostbitten and beaten, they turned back. A new plan: 3 men would go, 2 would stay behind. Lorne Knight was too sick to travel. Ada, still terrified, still without the hunting skills her ancestors would have considered essential, was left with him. She had no vote in this. On January 29, 1923, Alan Crawford, Fred Maurer, and Milton Galley walked into the white distance with the sled and the dogs. They promised to come back quickly. Ada watched until they disappeared. They were never seen again. The day after they left, a storm hit hard enough to split ice and erase tracks. Ada and Lorne rationed 6 small pieces of bread a day, hard and dry, and waited for spring. She set traps, hauled fuel, tended the stove, scraped hides, all of it while still afraid to carry a rifle, while knowing a polar bear could appear without warning. At first, she carried only a snow knife, a thin blade that offered more comfort than real defense. Lorne got worse. He passed out chopping wood. Ada found him limp in the snow and dragged him back inside, certain he was already dead. He wasn't, but something had broken in him. Even then, lying sick, he criticized her constantly, called her lazy, called her stupid, sometimes accused her of starving him. Her reply was simple: she was starving too. There were weeks when Ada became too sick to trap, her body failing from hunger and cold and sheer weight of everything. In those stretches, the distance between surviving and dying narrowed to the width of a breath. She began writing in her journal. In one entry, she described her own death, what should be done for Bennett, how he should be told, what he should receive. She wrote it the way poor people write wills, not as legal documents, as prayers against being forgotten. And then something shifted. Not a dramatic moment, a slow hardening, panic becoming procedure. Ada began to learn the island the way the men had tried and failed to learn it, by repetition, by paying attention, by accepting that no one else would do it for her. She trapped more effectively. She practiced with a rifle, forcing her hands to hold steady, forcing herself not to flinch. One day she shot a bird clean out of the air. It was a small thing against the scale of the Arctic. Inside her, it was enormous. She was no longer waiting for someone else's competence to save her. Spring returned reluctantly. Birds came back. Light stretched across the island like a slow exhale. Ada hunted. She gathered eggs. She killed her first seal. She kept moving, because stopping was the same as dying. In August, the fog rolled in heavy. Ada moved through her routines with the numb efficiency of someone who has survived too long to waste motion. Then, she heard a sound she almost mistook for walrus. She climbed to her lookout, raised her field glasses into the gray. A mast. Ada ran to the beach as if her legs weren't hers. She splashed into the surf, ready to swim if she had to. She expected to see Alan, Fred, and Milton step off that deck, grinning, apologetic, alive. Instead, a stranger, Harold Noyce, sent north by Stefansson to retrieve whatever remained of his venture. Ada asked where the men were. Noyce had no answer. He had expected to find them all. When she understood she was the only one who had made it, the shell she had spent 2 years building crocked open. She collapsed on the shore and wept. Noyce's crew buried Lauren Knight properly. Ada gathered what remained of her life in that camp: tools, clothing, the ragged evidence that she had endured. She took one last look at Wrangel Island as the ship pulled away. She would later call it an island of death and disaster. Back in civilization, her story became something people wanted to use. Newspapers called her a female castaway, a northern Robinson Crusoe. They admired her devotion to a dying man, as though brutal labor under constant threat of death was a charming quality in a woman. Then came the uglier turn: accusations that she let Lauren Knight starve, fueled by fragments of complaint, missing diary pages, and the ease with which a poor Indigenous woman could be